Good, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lakeisha Copley. I'm your host. I'm the host of Daughters Against Domestic Violence events, and I'm winning while waiting. And today we are having our third event here in Lithonia, Georgia. And I wanted to introduce my panel. My panel consists of people who have been and survived through domestic violence, as well as those who have watched their family members go through domestic violence. My first speaker, her name is Tanisha Bills. She is the CEO of TV Media, and she's awesome. She does hair. She has her own cosmetic line. She does it all. Oh,
Hello, everybody. How you doing?
hello.
Okay, my name is Tanisha Biz. I am the CEO of TV Media Group, and I'm also a 25-year cosmetologist in the beauty industry. I'm also a trichologist, that's a hair loss specialist. I am a survivor of domestic violence. My first marriage, was very physical. So I survived through that, and then, mental abuse and also sexual abuse as well. So that's me. And I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much, Lakeisha, for this amazing opportunity.
You're welcome. So tell us, Tanisha Bills, about your growing up, your background.
Well, my background consists of a very Caribbean lifestyle. My mother was Jamaican, and my biological father is Jamaican. My stepfather is Dominican, so he speaks French. And we grew up in a 12 children household. My mother, she started having children at the age of 15 years old. And all of us, we're like step babies. My mother, herself has experienced domestic violence with my biological father. So that's why they're not together today. So growing up in a household full of a lot of estrogens and testosterone and all kind of attitudes and things like that was, quite different. I was the oldest three. I'm the eldest three of 12 children. And growing up with having the full responsibility to take care of your brothers. They were smaller than me, now they're older than me, so they try to tell me what to do. But anyway, that was a big responsibility to the point where my father, they did not allow us to talk to boys. Like, we couldn't talk to boys at all. We couldn't stand up on porch. We couldn't have a boyfriend. We couldn't go to prom with a boy, and they didn't have a big religious background, but they just had morals in that aspect of they didn't want their daughters getting pregnant early. And none of their, out of all 12, out of 5 girls, everybody had their baby after they graduated high school. So, but what it did was that kind of sheltered us a little bit and didn't understand like some of the verbiage that guys use or some of the slang and the stuff like that. So it was easy for me to be swindled or easy for me to kind of be naive. And so I was very naive. So I met my first relationship, my first husband at the time when I was young. I think I was about 16 going on 17. And we got married. At 17, he was in A school in the military. And we got married. And the first, I want to say 2 years was okay. And then after the 2 years, I got pregnant and he didn't want the baby. He moved me to live with his family, which was in Atlanta at the time. And so I moved with his family and then he started abusing me physically. They were saying things to me. They were saying that I was cheating and stuff, which was not true. And so that caused him to lose respect for me, and he started physically abusing me. And so I accepted it for 10 years. I stayed in an abusive marriage for 10 years. I had 3 boys at the time in that relationship. So I stayed there for 10 years and thought it was okay. I thought it was acceptable. That's what you're supposed to do. You're okay to be, And then I never told anybody at the time until one day I went to a church service in Decatur, Georgia. I started becoming a member of the Apostolic Church there, and I got saved. Got baptized with the Holy Ghost, and I didn't understand that you could talk about it and speak. I used to go to church with a black eye. That's how I do makeup. Believe it or not. Yeah, I had to because I had to cover it up. And one day I prayed. I made an altar. I opened up my closet. I cleaned it, and I prayed. I told God, I said, if he's not the one for me, please remove him. But if he is, change him. And I think within the next couple of days after that, he packed his stuff and left and said, I'm leaving you and I'm leaving you with the kids. And so ever since then, that's how my journey started, which we are being a battered wife, because I was literally a battered wife for 10 years. I had black eyes, I couldn't see, my glasses was broke, all kinds of stuff. And today, I'm not a CEO of TVV.
So how did that affect your self-esteem?
Oh my gosh. Well, at the time he was speaking to me, he said I was ugly, fat, nobody was gonna want me with 3 kids, which I know that's a lie. And I was I want to say I was a size 4 at the time, and I literally wore 2X clothes because I thought I was huge. Like, I would look in the mirror. So I never all of my weight at the time came on me after I had my first son. Yeah, I gained like 40 pounds, and then gaining 40 pounds still like a size 12. So, but I started eating and workaholic. I mean, workaholic. Now, when people make jokes about Jamaicans working for real, that's the true story. But that wasn't my story. It really was. I was working a lot, and it changed my self-esteem a lot. I felt big. I felt ugly, nasty. Because at the time, believe it or not, when I was molested. So that's the door. That was the opening of my rejection because I didn't understand it. So the door opened up there, and I told my ex-husband, the ex-husband at the time, and he used that against me. Something like to this point. Well, that's why you went through that, or that's why you were sexually abused because your mouth is too much, or you. So he was identifying it, and I began to believe that. See, words have power, and so those words have power over my life, and it took 15 years for me to literally understand that was not mine. That's not who I was. But 15 years is a very long time to go through low self-esteem. You know what I mean? So I stayed in that. So it affected my self-esteem to that point, to where I didn't know who I was. I didn't believe people loved me. I had very bad spirit, and I'm gonna say it, of rejection, isolation, wanted to be validated. You think I should do that? No, you think I should do that? Somebody say your hair is beautiful. I would say, oh yeah, but, and find something wrong with it instead of just saying thank you. I appreciate that. So it affected my self-esteem really bad. It's really bad.
So obviously you came out of low self-esteem, rejection, abandonment. So what do you think was the breaking point that helped you realize that you are not that?
Oh, okay. So the breaking point for me was when I got connected to my apostle, at the Harvest Tabernacle Church in Lithonia, Georgia, and my pastor, Pastor Stephanie Jennings. I've been in the ministry over about 6 years, and from the moment I walked in the ministry, I've been speaking into my life, like positive, negative thoughts, validation. I needed spirit of rejection. I mean, everybody don't have that story, but for me, it was in the safety of counsel for me in order for me to understand who I really was. A lot of people don't need. A lot of people, their experience is different than mine. But mine, I needed a man that to tell me you're beautiful, you're awesome, and things like that. I needed to hear that from a pure place instead of to hearing that from somebody who just wanted me because my butt looked good or my hair or I was cute or you know what I mean. So I needed to hear that, and especially from a mother's perspective, my pastor, she did that for me, and so that's where I began to heal and begin to find out who I was, and that I understand now that I don't have to be validated by anyone. If I really want some validation, I can call my apostle and say, I need some validation, or my pastor and say, I need some validation because I know it's coming from a pure place, and I know they're going to be real with me. And that's what you need in your life. You have to have somebody that you can talk to and go through to help validate you and help keep you on track. So that's where it came from.
Is there anything else you want to share with the audience?
Yes. Okay, so just a little bit. So I wrote a book called True Beauty Uncovers. The reason why I wrote this book, I was touring it, like going through my head, like, should I release this book? Because I was afraid really to release it, only because it talks about my testimony and it opens up some wounds that people thought they closed. And so it opened up my family wound, and my grandfather, and I do not have a problem with saying this on TV, television, whatever. My grandfather, my step-grandfather molested me and molested my mother. He molested my sisters. He molested everybody in our family to the point where it's generational. It was a generational thing. And the women in our family are very dominant. So that's part of the reason why. Is because they felt like they had to close in, not say nothing. So they deal with their rejection inwardly, being dominant. And so I had to find that out. That maybe that's probably why some of my relationships didn't work. I was so dominant. But anyway, so I wrote a book called True Beauty Uncovered, and it talks about my life on how I covered up beauty. Because it's very easy to cover up beauty. You can be, it doesn't, and there were three things that God gave me. And he said, beauty is external, beauty is inner, and then there's an essence of God's glory that's beauty. And you have to be able to get to that point. It's really hard sometimes because of all the things that we go through. But when you start dealing with external, that's fine. External is beauty. Anybody want to look good on the outside? It's all right. Or appear beauty. It's okay. But also inner beauty, and that's the point in your life where you seek counseling or you get help or you don't understand why you're lashing out at people or you don't understand why you don't feel like you're beautiful. This is the part that you deal with. But when you begin to get into the glory of God and begin to really sit down and say, wait a minute, it takes you to a whole nother level. That's where the peace of God is in your life. And so those are the three things. That's what really the book is all about. It's talking about finding true beauty and not beauty. Beauty, we all in here have a form of beauty. But true beauty is what's on the inside. And that's my basic message. So I wanted to share that. It came out of my book, True Beauty Uncovered. It just talks about uncovering who you really are and not putting on a facade in front of people because it's really easy to do. I was married for 8 years to he's a good person, but the relationship wasn't for me, and I covered up in that relationship of who I was. I covered up, being this woman and all of this in him. I had everything wrapped in him, and so covering that up for 8 years as well did not help me. But now that I know who I am, I know who God created me to be, and all of this great, beautiful stuff. I understand now what true beauty is, and my true beauty is in God, and that's what I'm doing.
Do anybody have any questions for Tanisha?
So the book was published?
The book will be out in August, the end of August.
So how do you, as a mother of 3 boys, you said you were in a relationship with this abusive man for these 10 years. How do you, as a mother of those 3 boys, teach them or show them that that's not like, because evidently I don't know what his, whatever was with him, but how do you explain it to your boys that it's okay that you let that man beat you like that?
Well, see, my boys at the time were really small. They were young babies, like they were 2 and 3 and 4. And when he started abusing me, you're right. I had to really talk to them about that. And as they got older, I explained to them that this is not the right thing to do. This is not, of course now they're with him, with their dad, but and I have been afraid of them turning out like that. But I believe that I cover, and this is not for everybody again, I cover my children in the blood. And I pray over my children. And I teach them, I don't sugarcoat nothing when it comes to my boys. Some moms do. I just don't. And I tell them, you hurting this person, you can't do this, you can't talk like that, stop raising your voice, it don't, things like this. So I ended up talking to my kids about abuse when they were like 6, 7, 8 years old and teaching them. Fortunately, I got out. Some people don't get out, but I was able to get out. My last straw was when I went and bought my first pair of 9-West shoes, and they were like almost $100, and I was like, okay. And he took that sole of that shoe and hit me in the back of my head right here. And I was like, I really, literally was seeing stars everywhere. He stabbed up my clothes and everything. And that was my straw. I couldn't do it anymore. I said, this is it for me. Because if I'm dead, who's gonna raise my 3 boys? Not him. So that's what at the time. Now I feel a whole lot different. I'm like, take your kids, But now it's I think he's kind of calmed down a little bit with his little abusive ways. But with me, he was really young. So with the boys, I had to teach them. I started teaching them at an early age that that's not the proper way to handle a situation. Yes, ma'am.
So you said the boys are with him now?
Yeah, they are with him now.
So you don't see signs of, I know you say stuff, but if they see something pattern out, I know how it is when I've had a sister in domestic violence with kids. They look at what you say, but they still look at what you do. And they still have hostility because really they want to rage against the person because he's hurting you or he's hurting them, or he'll say little comments to them. So did you see any signs that they're not falling into that pattern of this is the behavior that's being exhibited and he's under, they're under his roof? Or does he just not abuse the children?
Like, he doesn't abuse the children at all. And I don't even think he abused his wife. I don't see that. No, I don't see that. I think he was young, and that's sometimes when you're young, you make stupid young decisions.
Okay.
And so I think he was like 19 when we both got married. I was just turned 18. So we didn't understand marriage. We didn't understand. So his frustration and how he took his frustrations out was putting his hands on me. And that's how it was. It was like that for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then my concern was like, okay, well, as your kids get older, they make their decisions. Literally. You can't stop them. You can't say, well, you can't go with your dad because then now you look like a villain. So I was okay, and it was the peace of God to me to help me to understand that they're going to be okay.
Did he have a history of abuse in his family? Like when you were with his family,
his dad was married. His
thing?
Dad was abusive at time, and then God, saved his life, and
Right.
he got saved. And now he's a pastor, and he's not abusive.
Oh, okay.
I mean, for real, like
Yeah.
it's like But I was concerned about that with my boys, but I'm no longer concerned about that. Now, I do say this. I see some generational stuff like, talk back chatting and not being respectful in certain areas. But one thing I can say about my boys, I am so grateful to God because one of my oldest son is in college, and my middle son is the second top culinary student in the state of Georgia, and my third son loves to sing. So they came out pretty good on that side. But I don't know about the anger yet because I have not really seen that part of it yet. They have not lashed out on me yet. So I haven't seen it.
All right.
I know you was talking about the generational curse. So do you think that you would be the good person to talk to them with their boys if that do occur, or do you think that your ex-husband would be more appropriate to explain to them that it's not the right thing to do?
No,
Because a lot of times women, we tell boys, but really and truly a man, really need to talk to them about what's right and what's wrong as far as putting hands on a woman. So do you think that in the future, pray that it don't never happen, but if they have like talk back or certain things, do you think that should come from him since you have straightened his life out?
Okay, here's what I feel. And that's a really good question. I feel that number one, I've raised them up until they were like 12, 13. They only been with dad for 4 years. So the stuff that I've instilled in them, church, prayer, just talking about issues and all of this kind of stuff, it's still in them. It's nowhere. What they have rebelled against was the fact that after that was put in them, their dad was trying to come back at them, take it out of them. And that's what they were rebelling against. I had to understand that from my youth pastor told me that. So now what happened is that the dad, I don't think, is a great candidate to talk to him, to talk to them about abuse unless he recognizes that he was abusive.
Mm-hmm.
He did not recognize that he was abusive. He thought that this was morally okay because this is how he thought. But I do now talk to my boys and say, and I don't see anything like, I see them like, they like girls and stuff, they're boys. So, but I don't see any like bad, like to the point where they're angry to the point they want to hit people. I don't see that. They never raise their hand to me. Never. I think if they do, it would probably be the last time they raise it to me. But I'm really hard on my boys, so, and I love them equally. I love them, I hug them, I kiss them. And the only thing they do is when we're in a disagreement, they voice their opinion. Mom, this is how I feel, and they get that from me. So I know that if I have not seen them physical or, I've not heard anybody, even at the school, come and say, well, they put their hands on the girl. I've never heard of that. So, did I answer your question?
Yes,
In,
not
in,
really.
in a way it did.
Okay.
I just know that when we was growing up, it was always good for a man to, a mother, you can raise them, but then when it comes to a point where they need to be talked to, they need to be a man. And I know that you said he got better.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
why I asked that
I
question.
think, yeah, and I think that was easier for me to release them because, trust me, I was like, I wanted to know, I wanted to talk to his wife. I wanted to make sure he wasn't putting his hands on her and things like that. So when they went over there, I don't like, I think some things I don't like, but I think it outweighs it for me because I feel like if he's not putting in bad things in their mindset or their brains, their mindset, it'd be okay. But what happened was that now, I think he is a good candidate to talk to them about abuse and about all of this other stuff that men talk to boys about. But that still don't stop me as a mother from telling them how I feel either. Like I'm gonna say what I need to say, whether I'm a man or whatever. Whether I'm a female, if I'm not a man, I'm still gonna say what I need to say to my kids and say this is not right. This is not how you treat people. This is not how you talk to people. This is not. And if they listen to me, they listen. But if not, hey, I have to plant the seed. Somebody else will come behind me and water it, whether it's him or somebody else, and it's God who gives the increase. So.
Have you been able to take your message into your church and work with the young girls to teach them the warning signs? And I know it's hard to get into the faith-based community sometimes.
It is hard to get, it can be, but I have not yet. I have not yet, and that's a good thing. I definitely will look into that. Yes, ma'am.
Have you and your ex-husband reached a point of having conversation about what you experienced?
No.
So I asked that question because then I follow it with another one. Like, then how do you know that he has changed?
I think it's more of a situation where I talk to the boys. I have a good relationship with the boys, and I do speak to my children about it. I ask them questions like, do you think that your dad is abusing? I do ask my kids. I'm sorry, y'all. I talk to my kids about everything. I don't sugarcoat it, and I don't hold back, and I don't think it's fair. And so, and because they're older now, 18, 16, 17, so they know. So I ask them, is he putting his hands on her? I mean, has he hit you in situations like that? They've gotten altercations, but there has not been anything physical where he has abused the children or even abused her. And if you look at it from that perspective as well, even if you go into, you're going to say, is he abusing the children? No, he abused you, but did he abuse them? No, he didn't, so he can still be around his kid. So I have to find a way to still work with him on that, but I still open the communication up with my child. Now I have a younger son that's very close to me, and he literally tells me everything. So if I ask him what's going on, he's going to tell me, and he hasn't said anything about it. He's got all is well. They just don't kind of agree sometimes because he's getting old. He's 16. He want to do what he want to do. They want to do what they want to do. So that's basically the situation, and that's how I know that there's really nothing going on. Because if there was something major going on, I'm sure there was. And I think also too, I had to get to a place in my life that I understand now that it's okay to release. And it was hard for me to release my kids. It's hard for any mother to release, but we can't. I couldn't hold on to them any longer because they really wanted to go be with their dad. And I kept saying, no, y'all, no, we ain't doing, no. I'm gonna put so much in you. I prayed, fast. We did all of this. But I ended up saying to myself, you know what? I have to release my kids. I have to release them to go to their dad. As hard as it was, there was a side that they was missing. They want to know who he was. They want to know how he talked to people. They want to know all of this stuff. And as much as I kept trying to hold them, they was bucking up against me. They was mad. They would, if I tell them to go clean their room, they would, no, I'm gonna do it. You only gonna see my daddy, and all this kind of stuff. So I got to the point where I said it's okay. And so they don't want to know that, and God told me, God, they ain't dead. They okay now.
So after he left, did he make any attempt to reach out to your children?
He did not. He did not make any attempts to reach out to the kids. Matter of fact, my oldest son was adamant about being with his father. And I kept saying, okay. So we found his number, we called him, and he said he didn't want him to call his phone anymore. And unfortunately, my son had to experience that. But even after that, he didn't care. Even today, right now, and I put this in him. So this is my thing, my doing. He says, Mom, I have to forgive him. I can't have no grudges, and I can't be angry with my father. And as much as I be like, okay, but I have to understand that's what I put in him. I put in him to forgive people, and that's what he's doing.
Okay, thank you so much, Tanisha. And our next panelist is Ms. Adriana Williams. She is a survivor of domestic violence as well as she's a philanthropist, and she also has a play.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
How are y'all?
Good.
Good. My name is Adriana Williams. I'm a writer, director, and producer. I'm a philanthropist, and I'm an advocate for domestic violence. My story. You know how sometimes as women we depend, not really depend, but we accept hookups from friends. So I, at the time, had 2 boys, and they were younger. I want to say 6 and 9. And my mother and I had restaurants and beauty salons. So one of my employees said, Miss Williams, I'm going to hook you up with my cousin. I said, okay. What does your cousin do? You know, tell me more about it. I guess everybody else had a problem with me being single. I was okay. Real okay. So she introduced me to her cousin, who they said was a club owner and owned car lots. And I was like, okay, well, doing things, because my habit was, my old saying, and still is, unfortunately, I'm changing now, but he could be a garbage man. As long as he treats me and my children good, even though I'm very successful and I'm doing things, I wasn't one of those women that had to have the attorney, the doctor, the person just doing everything. I would take someone, just as long as he was working and he treated me and my sons good, I was okay with it. So this time, this was a club owner and a car lot owner. So I was like, hey, moving up. Like Jefferson. So met him. He was okay. Different, very handsome. Drove nice cars. So I thought, well, maybe this could be true. About 2.5 months into the relationship, I started finding out that a lot of it was false. There was a lot of lies. And I didn't try to pull away from him because of that. I actually started pulling away because of the temperament, the different changes that I seen in him. At the time, I didn't recognize drugs, but now that I've gotten into mental health and alcohol and drug abuse counseling, I know now it was a drug habit there somewhere. It just started to the point where I was uninterested. And we as women, when we lose interest, that's it. No matter what he does, what he says, there's no interest there. There's a wall up, and I think he started seeing that. My mother and I were extremely close. I'm the only child. So I started talking to my mom. And I'm like, Mom, it's just something's not right about him. She's like, Adriana, I'm feeling the same way. I said, well, I'm going to pull out of this. 3 months went on, and I actually pulled away. That's when my problem started. That's when we really started seeing the crazy. his crazy was coming to my restaurant in my beauty salon. He was extremely physical. He wanted to fight, but I was a fighter too. And that's what he did not expect. So when he hit, I hit back. So he didn't expect that. I guess the women that he had dealt with, they didn't fight him back. Landriana was gonna fight you. Okay, I wasn't gonna let you beat me. I had a mother and 2 children in businesses. So somebody had to go. And I was going home safe. So it just became too bad in front of my children. When he seen that he couldn't really beat me physically because I did fight, then the guns started getting pulled. He would play Russian roulette with me. My mother had to jump in between me and guns. So if this man had fired that gun, I would have lost my mother from trying to protect me. A mother's love is something. So I knew then this is serious. My mother and I went down, we got protective orders. So I did everything that I needed to do to protect myself and my family. So in Louisiana, protective orders, they'll give it to you, but they really don't count for much. You know, they tell the man, well, you can't go within 100 feet, but if he comes within 100 feet, time the police make it there, you're either dead or you're beat up. You know, so they have to go look for him after that. And they're not going to take the time to go look for him. So it kind of continued, and he didn't live with me. We weren't dating. I was basically just trying to get rid of him. And so the last straw was him coming to the restaurant. And he pulled the gun. Well, by then, you know, back in the old school, we didn't have the fancy flat screens. We had the big TVs with the big butt in the back. So I literally picked that TV up, and when I finished, it was sitting outside of his head. And I let him know then, because my mom used to tell me, if you draw blood from him one time, that's it. But he had beat me down so much to where the fighter in me didn't have any more fight. I had started becoming afraid of him. And that's no now. Because as long as you stand your ground, sometimes they'll go on about their business or they'll back down. But when they start beating you down to where you're afraid of them, they feel it and they know it. And they continue. So he ended up having to go to the hospital, get stitches. From that point, because I had that restraining order, he went to jail from there. That was my saving. That was what helped me. When he got out of jail, of course, he started again. He was persistent little sucker. He started again, and at the time, he had another girlfriend. And she would, you know how women do, they call and, you know, be this, be that. Okay. You know, one thing about it is, I don't have anything different than what you have. You don't have anything better than what I have. We all do the same stuff. So you calling my phone, disrespecting me, he's going to end up doing the same thing to you. And he did. And when he did, he ended up breaking 3 of her ribs, her collarbone, fractured her skull, and something different with her eye socket. So he's still in prison. That saved us both. So with that situation, I tell women, if you know that it's a bad situation, get out of it. I understand there's a vicious cycle. It's a vicious cycle. You feel like you have to go back, or you don't want to be alone, or how am I going to take care of myself? How am I going to take care of my kids? You know, so you go from the abuser and you just keep on going. You leave and you keep on going back. You have to stay away. And that's what I had to do for myself. I had children, I had sons. And now to this day, I also have 3 sons, and I'm raising a daughter. So I had to show them this isn't cool. Putting your hands on people, yelling, being abusive is disrespectful. It's not something that is normal. And I didn't want it for them. I don't want it for them now. And I just feel like that's what you have to continue to teach. Teach not only your children, but teach in your community, teach women. And that's one of the reasons why I started my domestic violence situations. You know, I had friends that, one of them is deceased from domestic violence. You know, another one had 167. She's living, you know, but she's been shot. He literally shot her 12 times. That was overkill, you know, by the grace of God. You know, so we just as women have to be a lot stronger. And it's easier said than done, but we just have to be stronger. And we can't be scared to share the story. Most of us are embarrassed. I'm not going to say that because how are they going to look at me? They're going to talk about me. So what? So what? Because if your story can help someone else, then you have saved somebody. And that's a blessing within itself. So I don't know if I went off on a tangent. That's my story.
Okay, so you said that it affected you mentally. How did you build your self-esteem again?
I can't say that it didn't affect my self-esteem because it did. When you fear someone, that takes away from your self-esteem. I think him going to jail was my strength. My children were my strength. Just being able to go home and say, hey, I'm here, I'm safe, y'all are safe. You understand what I'm saying? Being able to see my mom, it's you have to build it, you know, and I think my family, I think my children and my mom and build it.
And I know you're from Las Vegas and you've done a lot of work and you have your domestic violence. You also have plays. So it's good that you're still making an impact. Did that put an extra drive in you to what you went through?
It did. I was born in Vegas, but I was reared in Louisiana and Los Angeles. So a lot of when I was a councilwoman and things, all that was in Baton Rouge. And the actual situation took place in Baton Rouge. But it was a drive. It was a source. And I won't say for my right, I would say more so for like when I powerful driver source.
Anything else you want to say?
No.
Anybody have any questions for her?
I think her hand went first back here.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Well,
ma'am.
I don't really have a question. I
Yes,
actually have a comment.
Okay.
I just want to say to especially all the mothers in the room, I applaud you guys. I have a son as well. And my story is a little bit different as far as my son, but I want to say that I applaud you because I know that you have your sons here with you.
Yes, ma'am.
And basically what you're doing is they're being made aware of not just seeing it affect you, but they know that it has affected other women as well, which means they will become advocates. So that we talk about the generational curse in a
Yes, ma'am.
negative way, but this is very positive.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
I just wanted to applaud you.
Thank
All
you.
of you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
So, I know you said that you were, what pretty much saved you was when he went to jail.
Yes.
He's still in jail now.
To my knowledge.
Are you afraid that when he comes back out, he's going to try to do that again?
Well, if he's out, he's in Baton Rouge. And it wouldn't be his best interest. Because my oldest son now is 20, this one here is 17. They ain't having it. They were young then, and they always say, Mom, if we were older, he would have pulled that. And I know that. So, but I don't think it would be in his best interest. And honestly, even besides my sons, I've found a whole new source of healing, and that's God. So I'm like the first lady. I pray a lot, and I ask for help, and I ask for covering, not only for my children, but for myself. So I don't think he's going to come all the way to Atlanta. If he does, I'm just really important, just too important. He needs to go. Yes, ma'am.
My question I wanted to go into was from your report and the other women that have talked, warning signs, because I was like the first lady. My parents didn't let me date. They said stay away from boys, but that didn't train me. So I would not be like a drug paraphernalia. I would know nothing about that. You know what I'm saying? So that's what signs can we give to women that, I mean, of course now I'm older, so when I see a certain guy and he's talking a certain way, and I believe they pick people who they know they can do that with, because there's a test even when you go out in groups where they'll try certain things to see how far they can go, and if you are fearful or you are like, okay, then they keep it, they pick that one, but they don't pick me. They already know she's crazy. I'm gonna have to fight her, and they're right. They're right. But still being that naive person where, because I do hear women in domestic violence saying, well, you get into this savior thing where I gotta save him, or he was nice sometime in the beginning, because they don't start out like that at the club, because they know you're not gonna pick them. So they definitely ease you in and then do the gifts and all that good stuff. So what can we tell young women? These are some of the signs that that may lead to that. Or, of course, the first time he hits you, everybody said, well, the first time he hits you, get out. But even then, women still tend to carry, depending on their background. Oh, I gotta save him. Oh, he was good. And y'all just don't understand it when he cries. And when he cries with me, and you know what I'm saying? So that's that emotional. We don't want our women to have that, because they can have good self-esteem, but then feel like, I gotta help him, because, he's a human being. So what can we say, what some of the signs that you identified or the flags you saw, that said, this might be time to, he may not be the one.
The signs, like I said, I didn't really start seeing them until I got older. By me being an only child, my mother was extremely strict. So I couldn't have boyfriends at all. That was just it. I don't think I got fast, as we call it, until I went to college at Southern. And that's when I really started seeing boys, and I was like, yes, this is good. So under my mother's roof, I wasn't allowed. So signs as a young girl, I wouldn't have known it. My mother didn't drink, she smoked up until 1991, cigarettes. She didn't have men in and out. I had a stepfather. So I had a family unit. So I didn't see men and, wildness. My mother was a district attorney and broker for Century 21. I seen a working woman, and that was it. So signs coming from someone like me, I would have to use the terms my mom used to say. I was green as goose crap. So signs for me, I got messed over a lot. Drugs now, because I'm in that field, we have a behavioral health company that deals with drugs and alcohol and mental illness. I'm able to see it now at 42, but at 20, I didn't know it. I wouldn't know if it was drugs or alcohol or just pure crazy, because I wasn't accustomed to it, I wasn't introduced to it, and it was new to me. So my advice to young ladies is pay attention, because sometimes you don't see the signs. Like you said, they come across and they're like Prince Charming, because he was, and if it's something new to you, you're going to flock to that. Like I said, when I was told that he had this and he had that, that was new to me. Wow, now somebody that kind of comes to the table with something. I already had mine. So now, finally somebody that comes to the table with something. So sometimes you just have to kind of pray on it, and you just have to watch and be mindful, because it doesn't just jump out at you and say, hey, I'm crazy. It doesn't do it, or I'm on this, or I'm drinking too much. It's not going to do it. So it's something that you're going to have to just kind of pay attention to, and just hope that you catch it. But that first time that he yells or puts his hands on you, that's validation enough.
So can I offer something? I'm not a victim of domestic violence, but I'm gonna share three things. One of the things my father always said to me was, if somebody can't treat you better than I treated you, you don't need it. The other thing is, we have to stop as a society, as women, living in a fantasy world, looking for a Prince Charming, because just as jaded and shaded as we are, a man would be, I'm very cautious of men, and I may be too cautious. I don't live in relationships. I don't just have to be in a relationship at all. But when people are overly nice, you should always be suspicious. And of course, you're going to be suspicious if they're not nice, right?
Mhm.
So sometimes we have to put our thinking caps on and wear them tighter than we've ever worn them before. And that causes a change in everybody's life and our thinking. But the other thing is the question that you asked about signs and how do you know that somebody's involved with drugs or anything that's questionable. In today's society, it's everywhere. So what we have to stop doing is coveting our kids, like protecting them to the extent that they don't know what's going on in the real world. Like there are ways that we can give them the lessons, and it's better learned at home and being exposed to at home. And I'm not saying go get some drugs and paraphernalia and show it to them. Get videos. There's all kind of things. Everything is on television and the internet now. Sit your kids down and have the conversations with them. Show them. I mean, like the lady who smokes the cigarettes with the voice box. If that's not the most scary commercial I've ever seen in my life, and now they're showing them dying. So that's a lesson. Now, can your kids grow up and start smoking just because the temptation is there? Yeah, but you don't show it to them once. You keep showing it to them and you keep talking about it. You can put a nursing home and let them see some folk with the box or to different places. Like you can take them to visit a place for victims of domestic violence, a drug rehabilitation center, teen challenge, all of those places. There are plenty of opportunities to expose our kids to things so that they have a lesson learned and not something that would track them in the wrong way amongst their peers.
You definitely have to keep your kids involved. I take mine everywhere. From giving back to the community, I actually make them, not really make them, but because now they do it on their own. But we do like families, food for needy families, turkeys, hams, things like that. We do that in Vegas, Baton Rouge, and we're starting it here since we moved here to Atlanta. They spearhead that now. So when we go feed the homeless, they're there. They see it, and that's what I appreciate about them, just because you guys come from a good background and you guys are living good. Now you get a chance to see everything, so you have to expose them to it. You have to. Yes, ma'am.
And I know we're talking about domestic violence, but also we have to understand that it also starts with the verbal abuse.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of times, it starts small, real small, like the lady before was talking about, your hair, your hair looks like, no, it don't, and all this and all that. So we miss that part, but that's where it starts. That it don't start at just coming in and getting. Right. The little small things that, that he starts to, saying to you.
So that would be a sign.
And those are the signs, but, so it goes back to, those are the signs that we have to remember that when he first saw you, you're beautiful, you're this and that, and then 2 months later, go fix your hair, you look ugly, and that type of thing. And it messes with your self-esteem where then when your self-esteem drops down, that's when the opportunity to hit you a couple of times because now you're weak. They works on the mentality first. And then they start on the bigger things.
Yes.
So then that's hard for you to come out because of the fact that he already done help you drop your self-esteem to the floor, and now he's beating on you, so you're scared to leave.
That's true.
So I can say that I was 5 children my mother had. Now one of us, my dad never whooped now one of us. My mom did the whooping, but my dad whooped my mama. He beat my mama in front of us. And one day he went to work and she took off with all 5 of us. It took him a while to find us, but he still came after the divorce to beat her. And right to the day, neither one of us even allowed that into our lives because we was there to see it. So we was taught that. We was born in the church, we was raised in the church. And that Bible opened up every day before we went to bed. So yes, you can be taught that, but you have to be able to carry it with you when you leave your mother's nest. To say, you know what, I'm not gonna, and my dad was a great father. He was a great father. He just beat my mom that whatever relationship they couldn't do, You know, it just was not good, you know, but he was a great father. And he did it in front of us, which taught me that, you know what, if I meet you and you say something that in that first conversation that I don't like, I'm gonna run. I'm not gonna walk away, I'm gonna run away, because it taught me to listen to those things that he said to her in front of me, you know, say, you know what, you gonna never be nothing, you know, you're gonna always be on welfare. You're gonna always this and that and this and that. And she never worked, but when she left him, she found a job and made something out of herself. And she proved him wrong. But in the same sense, he was a great father. So sometimes we do get great fathers that teaches us this is not the way to go. But in the same sense, in the same breath, you saw him do it yourself. So you saw with your own eyes, but then in the other ear, he was a great father. And like people probably say, wow, that's crazy, but it was true.
Right.
You know. So I just wanted to just share that. Say, you know, we just got to look at the little signs. And I'm telling you, I got a husband now, he's still a man, he's 6'4", 280.
So I have a question, and it's for you, because I heard the other lady, the other panelists say this, that the man is a great father. He's not a great father, this is my opinion, if he's setting a bad example in front of the kids. Like, how can you be a great father if you beat
He
the
was a worse
mother of your
husband. He
children?
was a bad husband, but as far as raising his kids, he was a great father. You can't put both of them in the same category.
Well, I'm
Even
saying
though
the
he
lesson-
abused her, he still was a great father. When we was with him, even when he came to the house to pick us up, he was a great father. But he was the worstest husband that anybody could ever marry.
I guess I just don't.
They're not in the same category.
Okay. I
A
just
great
don't
husband
understand
and a father is not in the same category.
Well, okay.
I
I
was wondering too, did you say he beat her in
front of you.
Yes.
That's what.
I'm saying the raising part, as far as
okay.
raising us.
Two different things. I mean,
Yes.
same man,
Yes.
two different categories.
Exactly.
Yes.
And if you take, like she said prior to this, if she takes that to the court, there's nothing that they're really going to say, because he didn't beat the children. He beat the mother. You know?
But abusers are smart enough to do that. So what the signs for me that if my father had done that, I would say that he wouldn't have been as great of a father because of the example that he set in front of me for abusing my mother. If I see you do anything, that takes away from the greatness.
Right. And some children are different.
Yeah.
You know, some children are going to feel the same way that you feel. And there's going to be some children that say, that was my dad, you know, and good, bad, ugly, and different, that's my father. You understand what I'm saying? And I hate what he did to my mom.
Oh, no, I know.
We didn't like what he did, but the fact was, he raised us outside of the home, but he still was the worstest husband a person can marry. But as far as raising us, he was great. I mean, financially, just that. When he sat down with us, he said, this is what you don't do. This is what you don't do. He taught us that after the fact. This is what you don't do. Don't put your hands on nobody. But in the process, he still was that man at one time.
Right.
So he came back and made things right. We'll say, you know what? And right to this day, two boys and 3 girls, never been in an abusive relationship, neither one of us.
So you had a conversation with him after the fact.
After, as you know, we was young, but then when we got older, he said, this is what you don't do. That was when he
That's a
woke
part of
up one
healing.
day and
You
said,
have
you know
to
what, I'm
have
not
that
gonna do it no
conversation.
more.
Yeah.
You have to.
Well, so you had that healing conversation.
Exactly.
Okay.
Any more comments?
When you're talking about the signs, I do counseling with teens and a lot of girls. And so we talk, I'm a survivor myself and been an advocate for 25 years. So I try to put that across with them. And one of the things that I find really challenging working with them is they have a hard time grasping that when he wants to know where you all are all the time and that type of thing, that's not because he cares about you that much. Right. So that's one of the signs that I really work with, on. And there's so many more, but that seems to be just huge for them where they can't quite grasp that no, that's not all about him caring so much about you. They're equating that love and control as one thing, you know?
But I think what contributes to that today for young women, is there's so many ways to locate you
Yes, oh, absolutely,
and to keep track of you.
yeah,
Whereas when we were growing up, cell phones weren't out and all that stuff.
right.
So now there's so many ways to keep up with a person
Mm-hmm,
that gives them even more, a greater desire to have control and for them to want to surrender to what they think is love.
Well, the best thing for a woman is not to be so needy, you know.
Right,
If
right.
a woman feeling like she has to have a man, you don't have to have a man. You know, you don't need a man to validate your womanhood. You know, I do just fine by myself. You know, that's when you fall into that pit hole, is when you feel like you just have to have a man. Learn yourself, love yourself, deal with yourself, date yourself, go out, you know, do things with yourself. Because if you don't love yourself and you can't deal with your own self, you're not going to be able to love and deal with anybody else. So you have to put yourself first. And that's the first thing that any woman needs to teach another woman. Love yourself, date yourself, enjoy yourself, enjoy your own company. Be comfortable in your own skin, whether you're a size 2 or a size 20. You, everything about you, from the top of your head to the sole of your feet. And take care of you, pamper you. Take care of you, health-wise, emotionally, spiritually, mentally. That's you. You're the vessel. You're the queen. Take care of it. Love it. Pray. And that's powerful. You know, ask God to, when you pray, be specific. He says, write it down, make it plain. If you want a man, if you just have to have a man, tell God what kind of man you want. And I mean everything in that man that you want, you tell God. You ask God for him. Don't leave anything out, because he's going to give you what you ask for. But if you're just saying, I just need a man, I want a man, you're going to get it. You're going to get it. You may not want him after you get it, but you're going to get it. So be specific. Be specific. Yes, ma'am.
One of the hardest things I find as women of domestic violence is they have a hard time moving forward into another relationship. How can you, today, you know, encourage somebody to say, look, she made like to say, all men, but I won't say all men are not alike. You have some very genuine men who really would never put their hand on a woman. So what is it that you could encourage a woman in here today to say, okay, it's okay to trust again. It's okay to move forward again. I know some women, I'm a victim of domestic violence, but I know some women who actually get into another relationship, and every time a man do this, they duck. You know, and I had a friend who was married, and he said, I don't know why she does that. And I said, did you ever stop to think maybe she was in a domestic violence abuse? So what is it that you could say to encourage someone in here today to say, look, it's okay to trust again, it's okay to move on, it's okay to love again, and what can they do? Because we know that healing has to take place before you, because a lot of women carry that into another relationship, and that is a problem, and they have to be totally healed from their past relationship, the domestic violence relationship, because a lot of them carry this baggage with them into something else, and some of them actually expect the new man to be them. Some of them actually crave for that. So what is it that you could tell that person that no is wrong to allow a man into, but at the same time it's okay to trust again and love again? Not all men is the same.
My first thing would be that old saying, to get, what is it? To basically saying, to get from up under one man, you get under another. Women have to take that time to heal. Get your body straight. Women are so used to just jumping from one relationship to the other. You have to give your body time to heal. You know, even from the intercourse and things like that. Get yourself checked. Take time for yourself. You have to take that time. But then you also have to heal, and then you have to forgive. You don't have to forget what happened to you, but you have to forgive, and you have to move on. And you have to realize that this man over here is definitely not this man over here. And you should have learned something from this. So if you're not seeing the same thing that you see over here, it may just be that he's about you. And you don't need to push him away, because we have a bad habit of pushing people away as well. Or our mouths. You know, you want to stand toe-to-toe to a man. You want to be able to say what you want to say. You know, you're not supposed to be a doormat, but just like you want him to respect you, you have to respect him. You know, give everybody that median time to where you cool off, I cool off. Don't give anybody a reason for you to put your hands on them or them to put their hands on you. You understand what I'm saying? So there's signs, but I just feel like you need to take time for yourself. Just take time to learn yourself. When you get out of one relationship, take time for yourself.
And everybody's healing process is different. You know, some persons may take a month or two to heal theirs. Some persons go through years, and
Yes.
you know, during the healing process. So one of the things we need to know that everybody heals differently, and their time is long. And I think I want to say, when we're talking about physical abuse or domestic violence, I've heard this growing up as a child that verbal abuse is more deadly than physical abuse, meaning that words can kill you. You know, and a lot of women suffer silently with verbal abuse. We all think that domestic violence is punch here. You know, that's what a lot of women see it as. So a lot of women suffer in relationships for years, 10, 20 years. I've known, right now a lady, a pastor's wife, I'm a pastor's wife, but I know a pastor's wife that is going through verbal abuse for almost 20 years, and she's afraid to get out. No physical abuse, just mental. And I, want to say that sometimes verbal abuse is just as bad. So it's worse, So some women sit there and just allow, and he's like, oh, you're not beautiful enough, or I don't want you, look at you, you're a pig, and she went through that for years, and I'm trying to talk to her and get her to understand that, you have to love yourself first. You've been in that for 20 years, and she's trying to keep this good face to the public, but inside, she is tearing up her path. And she said for 20 years she went through that. What advice can you give a person that's in that type of relationship? Because a lot of me, I'm not going to leave my husband, he's financially, all of this. And, what are the people going to say? So what advice can you give that person?
I think that we're getting too old to wonder what people are going to say or even care. Because how are you going to feel? What about you? That's what you need to ask them. Like, you're worrying about what the public is going to say. They're going to talk regardless. Your church members are going to talk. Your family members are going to talk. Your friends are going to talk. They're going to tell you one thing in your face, and they're going to get right behind your back and tell you something, say something different. So you can't please them. You have to please self. It's self-love. It's self-worth. And you can't worry about what the public is going to say, because the public is not going through what you're going through. And at the end of the day, when you close those doors, that's you crying. That's you unhappy. So when are you going to take the time to get out of that? It goes right back to women thinking that they need a man. You don't need a man, especially a man that's going to treat you like that. That's not love. So that would be my advice to them. Don't worry about what the naysayers say. That's their job. They're going to talk. That's what they're designed to do. You have to please self. You have to make self happy. And if leaving that man is going to make you a better person and a happier person, that's what you need to do. That's what you need to do.
Thank you. I had, I'll say two sisters. I had an older sister who had a daughter that's my same age.
Okay.
And my parents adopted her daughter later in life. And neither of them got the lesson that my father shared. So around age 18 or 19, so my older sister was murdered by her husband, and the niece that my parents adopted saw it. Now, for me, that would have been enough of a lesson going forward from 6 years old to say, never let a man touch me. So my father could not prevent his my older sister from being with that man. That was a choice she made. So around 18 or 19, um, the daughter met a guy who was older and abusive. She didn't have the kind of confidence that the rest of me and my siblings had instilled from my dad. Um, but my dad had a conversation with us, but we told my dad about the guy and the pattern of behavior. And he said, I'm going to tell all of you, come in here right now. And my older sisters, they were grown and out of the house, but he was like, everybody get in here. And the three, my twin and the niece were younger at 19. And he said, I've gone through this once and my daughter is dead. And he looked at my niece and he said, that's your mother. I'm your father now. But I'm telling you, he said, I haven't beat you and I didn't raise you to let someone else beat on you. I did discipline you. I did whip you. And then I turned around and loved you because I was teaching you. But no man out there in the street has a right to do that to you at all. He said, I don't speak down to you. Nobody has that right. So what he told us, and this was a lesson for me, is that he said, now, first time you come to me for help, if somebody is, violating you, I'm going to help you. But when you decide to go back, that's your decision. And he's going to see me whip you, and I'm going to give you right to him to let him whip you, and I'm no longer involved. He said, so you make the decision, because I've had that stress in my life already, and my daughter is gone, and I'm not going to walk down that road again with either one of you. I taught you how to love yourself, and you knew how I expect for others to treat you, and that's what I expect to see in you. Probably 5 or 6 years later, she married a guy that was abusive to her. And I say she died a couple of years ago of a broken heart. But she was just madly in love with this Negro, for a better word. It just didn't mean her any good. But she just had to have a man. I think the hole in her heart was the absence of her mother. Even though my mother was there was still this void. So she was searching for love in all the wrong places, and she never found true happiness. And I think that life is worth living much more than that. And I can say I've been in some bad relationships where that the first sign, say I'm a quitter. Not a quitter in life generally, but in a relationship, I can take it or leave it. But when I see signs that I learn from other people, when I see signs, I exit stage left while before it goes south, because I'm like you, somebody is not going to leave out here walking or be two sirens coming. One is the ambulance or the coroner, and the other is the police car to come and get me, because I'm leaving my mark on you somewhere. But and I don't like to fight, but if it comes down to it for me to defend myself, but I'm not going to wear myself thin in a situation of the heart where somebody's mentally abusing me. I hope never, and I pray never to do that. But I often talk to a lot of women, and I'm telling them, you deserve happiness in life, but you have to define who you are first and love yourself. So I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about love, and it's easier said than done, but we can go to the salon and get our nails done. We can get our hair done, and sometimes we may have to see our own ugly selves. Don't put the makeup on, don't put the hair on, don't put the lashes on, don't do the nails, and see the true ugliness. And then start digging in our hearts to say, what is it about me that attracts that kind of man? Because sometimes it's a pattern. And like I told you about my niece/sister that my parents adopted, there was a pattern for her, because it was never like all the nice guys that would have treated her like a queen, the queen that she was. She didn't have time for that. It was always the one that drove the big car, like he could do something for her and everything, and he wasn't doing jack for her. She's struggling to pay the bills, et cetera, et cetera. So sometimes there are signs that are so evident to everybody else, and they're never evident to us because we don't do the soul searching. So if somebody tells me that they're healed and they're over a relationship after 2 months, I'm just the kind of person to say, kind of sort of like, how did you find yourself in 2 months? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it takes longer.
And it can take much, much longer. And sometimes, whether we're a friend, a foe, or whoever, whatever we are to someone that's going through that, I have to take them by the hand and help them learn how to love themselves a little bit. And I don't know how everybody gets to a point that we truly love ourselves. Like, I have some things that I don't like about me, and I sit and soak about them, but I know that I love myself enough to try to avoid some of those situations. And I don't know how born like that. You know what I'm saying? But I think I saw enough of it around me to teach me a lesson to say, this is a stance that I have to take.
Right.
Now, I haven't had a lot of good or perfect relationships. I'm single, never been married, no kids, all that stuff. That doesn't make me perfect by any means. I wish I had tried it, but I don't wish it bad enough to my detriment. I think I like life and living a little bit better. And there's just some risk I won't take. That's all. But we do really have to learn to love ourselves, is what I'm saying.
Okay, thank you. Anybody want to go first? My next guest is Latoya Wilson, and she is also a survivor of domestic violence. And I just met her this year, and I'm excited to have you here today, Latoya. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am, like you said, Latoya Wilson. I'm originally from Maryland. I am a married mother of 3. I have 2 boys and a wonderful little girl. I'm the queen, although she thinks she is. But just starting back for me, as a young girl, I was molested by my uncle, and I was quiet. Like, to this day, I'm like, Lord, why was I quiet? Why didn't I tell anyone? Of course, there were a lot of things that came into play as far as my relationship with my mom and things like that. As a single parent, I understand now because I've been a single parent. Sometimes you have to do what you have to do. You can't always be there when you're trying to provide for your children. So while she was working, I had a family member that took advantage of that and took advantage of her child. And it wasn't until I was 21 that I actually broke my silence. The most heartbreaking thing was when I told her, she said, I know because he did that to my sister. And that just really I had already spiraled out of control as a teen because of dealing with that. But to hear her say that, it kind of put me in a place where she wouldn't have protected me in the first place. Like, that's where I went in my mind. And so everything that I dealt with after that was like, nobody's going to protect me, so I'm just going to deal with things. And I first dealt with domestic violence as a teen mom, where the signs, as teenagers, they're like, oh, he acting such, that means he really liked me. In my mind, my friends were like, girl, he crazy. We got it going on if he acting like that. But that wasn't the case. And when I dealt with that situation where we fought from one end of the street all the way to the other end of the street. And my son was about maybe 6 months old. My older son was about 6 months old. And after dealing with that, in my mind, domestic violence was never a conversation in our household, anything like that. But in my mind, I knew a man wasn't supposed to hit a woman. And I knew that it wasn't right. So I was a runner. Like, I'm not going to deal with this. I'm going to run. I went back home. And that was around the time where I got into church, I got saved, and that's when I started dealing with my past issues, the wounds, the promiscuity from being a teenager. Just so much I started dealing with those wounds when I got into church, and even down to telling my mom about what had happened. But my cornerstone, as I call her, my grandmother, she raised me for the most part when I wasn't with my mom or my daddy. She was battling with cancer. And I felt like that was the only person who knew me, the only person I could tell everything to, the only person that I really felt some sense of protection from. But at the same token, she was the kind of woman that would be like, you know, the man asks you what's your name, you tell him Pepsi, you tell him cigarettes. Like, he's not just gonna have no conversation from you and there not be some type of reciprocation. Like, you just not gonna be out here all willy nilly. So I'm dealing with that kind of upbringing. That shows me where her upbringing was, but at the same token, that was my foundation, that was my route. So when she was passing away, I met this guy, and that's where you come, the signs come in. Because this guy came up to me and he
Earlier
was
this month, we
like,
met Cheryl and Natasha, two educators
I
in
ain't.
Brooklyn, New York, who have made it.
So see, he said I ain't nothing, but he used a different word. So that right there should have been a sign for me to be like, girl, go that way. But instead, because I was dealing with so much and trying to heal, but at the same token, losing my grandmother. My father is a minister, so oh no, not the preacher's daughter. You better not. Like, you can't be doing that type of stuff. So instead of walking away from that situation, I'm like, oh, again, oh, he crazy. He's not really what he's saying that he is, although he's telling me to like, run for your life. But I chose not to, being that I was already dealing with so much. I was numb, just numb. So I dealt with him for about a year or so, and my grandmother had passed away and kept trying to see him, I was working a job, I had a job, a nice 5-bedroom house, had my own car. But then I had him where he started drinking, he starts verbally just unhappy with his life, just attacking me. But in my mind, I'm not in a domestic violence situation because he's not knocking me upside my head, he's not beating me up, he's not leaving me black and blue and just all the things that in my mind I thought was domestic violence, to the point where there was a situation where it got so bad he would take me on a dark road and he had a gun. He would pull the gun out. Now I don't know if he was going to shoot me, but it was a scare tactic. Like, he would do things to scare me, to the point where it was just like, I don't know if he, at the same time, like, I ain't gonna try and leave him. So when I found out I was pregnant with my son, which was pretty much after I had been told that I wouldn't be able to have any more kids, I was like, Lord, I'm gonna be stuck with this man forever because I got his child. And in my mind, like, I know you don't have to be with the person because you have their child, but in my mind, and he's already crazy, and he even showed me that he was crazy, I'm like, I can't leave him because I got his child. And that's where another guy came into play, where you were talking about women just feel like, you know, they'll go from one man to the next man. I felt like, okay, maybe he'll protect me. So I'm seeing him and thinking he's gonna save me, when in all actuality, they pretty much run in the same clique, they blood brothers, and it's just, I came from the streets. If we can just be real, like, I was in the streets, I was smoking, I was drinking, I was doing all different types of things before I got into church, and then as I stepped away from the church, I got back into those things. So it played a big part in situations that I found myself in. So with that, it was just like, to me, I was in a losing battle, trying to find myself, trying to heal, and then I have this situation where now I'm pregnant, and it's like, what do I do? So the breaking point for me was when I had my son, like, when I gave birth to him. The day after he was born, he was brought into my room in a box. And they told me I couldn't touch him, I couldn't hold him, I couldn't do nothing. He had to be like flighted to another hospital. And before all of that, like, I endured a whole lot with the verbal abuse to the point where it did get physical once I was like 8 months pregnant. It was like you let it go on and on and on. Then once I get 8 months pregnant, now you want to get physical. So it's just like, okay, what do I do? I'm depressed. I'm having panic attacks. I'm just suicidal. I don't know what to do because I feel like I'm stuck with you because I'm having your child. But in that, I got to the hospital because I wasn't staying there. I had to have an emergency C-section because both of us were dying while I was in labor. And I had to have an emergency C-section, and I was like, you're not leaving me in this hospital. You took my baby. I'm going wherever it's going. I don't care anything about this being like a major surgery, whatever. So at the hospital, we got to the hospital, and he went with me. We got to the hospital. And before we got upstairs, he said, I wish you would have died. So I wouldn't have to ever deal with it. And that, for me, was my breaking point. When they say, you know, God always makes a way of escape. Had he not said that to me, I probably would have still been going on and on about the situation, just dealing with it. My son probably would have grew up seeing that. I don't know, but I know that was my way of escape. That was my way of getting out. But even in that moment, I asked God then to help me forgive him. Because that's the only way I'm going to be able to move forward and raise this boy with some sense of direction, some sense of being, because I was broken, but I didn't want him to see me broken. I didn't want to raise him as a broken woman, because even in the midst of everything that I went through, Christ was still at the center of me. Like my stepmother had me in church as a little girl because I bounced back and forth between my dad, my mom, and my grandmother. But my stepmom, she introduced me to church. She introduced me to Christ, and I kind of went back and forth in my life, going to church, out of church, going to church, out of church. It was a constant struggle, but at that moment, dealing with that and being so broken, I knew that I needed God to move forward. So with that being said, even after that, I felt so strong, I felt so empowered, I stopped dealing with him, cut him off. No sooner than I got home from the hospital, got my own place, got on my feet, there he was at the door. We gonna be cool, we gonna raise this baby cordially, we gonna do this, we gonna do that. Well, in the midst of that, I found out, again, God had given me another escape. That wasn't even his child. Because the person that I thought was going to protect me, we dealing with each other during that, ended up, I had gotten a blood test behind his back because he started looking like the guy. So I'm like, Lord, you're doing it big. Like, this is in my mind, and I'm trying to put it so I don't confuse you. But I'm like, God, you're doing it big, but so what am I supposed to do now? Because if I tell him this ain't his child, if I tell him this ain't, baby, he really gonna kill me. So we went through that, and I was dealing with him, let him see him. Like, I got to tell him because even though I was back and forth in the streets, I still was taught things that even if I went against the grain, I was taught. You know, I was given morals, I was taught certain things, and I just was hard-headed at times. I wanted to do my own thing, but everything in me as a woman and as a mother is like, you got to tell him. You can't just be playing games with him, because that's really what get women hurt. When you play those type of games and you don't be upfront, you don't be honest. So I told him. He threatened to burn the house down with me and the kids, and like I would literally be looking out my window every 5 minutes. I was not getting any sleep because I'm constantly looking out the window like, any minute, man, he's gonna burn my house down. He's already showed me that he was crazy. So me being the runner that I am, I came to Georgia. I was like, I'm gonna get away from him. He's not gonna kill me and my baby. And at that time, I had sent my oldest son to live with his dad because he was also abusive to my son. Like when I would go to work, he would make them drink hot sauce. He would put his
Jesus.
hands over top the burners on the stove. He was telling me he was ugly. You know, he was just mentally and verbally abused him as well. So I was just like, yeah, I gotta go. I came back to Georgia, and once again, the guy who was my son's father said he knew all along, but yeah, he went to prison. So I'm like, Lord, I just felt like God just was blessing me and hurting me all in the same. Like, how are you giving me this way of escape, but you're also leaving me out here? Like, what do I do? Are you really with me? Are you really there with me? Are you really walking with me? Are you really keeping me protected? But when I think back on the times that he pulled a gun out on me and pulled the trigger and it didn't go off. When I think about the times that he did certain things to me and I didn't lose my mind. When he said certain things to me, like he would literally have me look in the mirror. He would say, look in the mirror, tell yourself he loves me and he's coming back. And I would literally do that. He would leave me, I would drop him off with other women. And I tell myself in there, he loves me and he's coming back. To the point where it just got, when I came to Georgia and all of that just came crashing down on me. And I just really cried out to God. I got to a place where I was so broken. To where I just said, God, I'm sorry. Help me. Heal me. Because I really felt like I was going to go crazy with so much that I dealt with, even from trying to commit suicide and it not working, or somebody coming to my door just as I'm about to try to slit my wrist. You know, I've been walking with you all this time, but you keep going against the grain. At what point are you just going to surrender all to you? And in dealing with that, I got to a point where I was homeless with my two boys. And I was in the hotel and breaking down and just crying out to him. I got to the point where I started looking myself in the mirror and saying, I love you, don't look back. And I would just keep telling myself that over and over, I love you, don't look back. I love you, don't look back. God is with you. And I just kept telling him, I surrender all to you. I'm not going to go back. I'm not going to do the things that I was doing. Even in that, I wasn't perfect. I was still smoking, trying to cope, but then trying to hold on to God at the same time. It was like I was still struggling. And then there came a point where it was just like, God, I'm going to give it to you. I know I'm not going to change overnight. I know this isn't going to be easy, but I got these two boys. I entrusted one to you. And now I have this other one that I have to give to you, because if not, it's like I'm doing to them what's been done to me. So I moved in with my mom and I met my husband. When I tell you, there is love after dealing with so much. The very first time he laid eyes on me, he said, "You're my wife." I said, "Oh no, Blair." Like, you're crazy. Like, no, I'm not your wife. I don't know what's wrong with you. We gonna kick it. I'll be your friend and all that. But I was determined to love me again. I was determined to be whole. I was determined to be healed. And he loved me through my brokenness. Like when I say he didn't keep trying to come. He was persistent, but he didn't keep trying to come at me like, be with me, be with me, be with me. He loved me through my brokenness. He allowed me to heal and just be my friend and walk with me. He allowed me to just share myself and not be like, girl, what? Because I had been in relationships and been like, you did what? You allowed what to happen? Oh no, like, I'm either going to abuse you like they did, or I just can't deal with you because you like a disease. You know, guys will treat you like you was a disease when they know that you dealt with certain things, even things that were out of your control as far as me being molested. And he never did that. I'm going to let you become whole, let you do what you need to do, but I ain't going to. Literally, every time I looked up, he was there. He was there for my boys from day one. He's like, I don't want anything from I see past where you are right now. And I'm thinking, I'm living in a hotel with two boys, and you see past where I'm at right now. Yes, what exactly are you saying? 'Cause I can't even see me past right now. But I'm truly a testament to say, and I'm in the process of legalizing a nonprofit organization, Woman Warrior Overcoming Mistakes and Negativity through Christ, because that's how I overcame. I put myself in the Word constantly. Even sometimes now I'm like, so it ain't that deep. Every time you look around, if this guy got to be about God, but it is because He saved me.
That's right. Say it. That's right.
When I thought I was stuck, when I thought I was never going to come back from the things that I dealt with, He kept telling me, you'll come back.
Yes, you will.
This is for my glory. Even the things that I'm like, no, God's not going to use that. God would let me go through that, but it's a testament that you can and you will overcome in Christ. His word says that you overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of your testimony. So any victim that's currently in a domestic violence situation, that's currently being promiscuous, that's currently strung out on drugs, that's currently just at a place in life where you feel like you're going to die, you will live again. And I'm proof.
So you said you went to Georgia to get out. What is your advice to someone who wants to get out?
If you don't have anyone in your that you can trust, or you can just set aside your shame to say, hey, look, I'm going through something and I need help. You have to be okay with that. You gotta set aside the fact that they might look at me. They, like I said, I'm a preacher's daughter, so to speak. He's not a pastor, but he's a minister, and sometimes things like that will keep us from speaking. Because I knew if daddy knew what was going on, oh no, and then my daddy would have been in jail, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't take that. But just set aside the shame. Set aside the shame and get help, even if it's not somebody that you know. As much as social media is out now and the internet and stuff like that, when I was a little girl, we didn't have that kind of stuff. Like even with pagers and little phones, we couldn't get on the internet with stuff like that. You call 911. I wouldn't necessarily say run to another state. If you have to, do what you gotta do. But the most important thing is to set aside the shame and get help. Google. You don't remember my phone number, you don't want to call the police, Google some numbers, some shelters. By any means necessary, do what you have to do.
Also have a stash for a rainy day.
Yes. Yeah, because I have stash of how I'm able to get the Georgia.
So do anybody have any comments or questions for Latoya?
I mean, I know that, she said she left, that she was, to get away from, the problem. And a lot of times, I find like in whatever community you're in, it's sometimes hard to find a shelter. Sometimes they want to put you on the list for so long. I'm talking about like, people come, even to me as a pastor, in the ministry, they need a place to stay. One of the things that God has put in my spirit as a vision, and that's what I'm working on now, that's why I like it, and I saw it on Facebook. I said, I'm just gonna go in and sit. I want to open a hope for violent women and children, because a lot of times we neglect the children. Children are also victims in a silent way, so we tend to pay attention to the person being abused. The children, they're also see, and a lot of times they see. So that's what one of the things I wanted to do is how homes are available, get the person to safety. The thing is, getting that person to safety, a lot of times, even because of belief, sometimes that still is not, not enough. A lot of women tend to go back into the situation. So, I don't know much about Atlanta. I'm originally from the Bahamas. I moved to Florida. I lived in Florida for a while. I recently moved up here about 2 years ago. What type of homes or anyone, that's for anyone, homes are available? I'm talking about right away. People, what you can have, other than the police, you can get people to safety. It's that is the thing in a situation. You have women being all hours of the night. You were afraid of him burning down the house. You should not have been in that house until he was either arrested or, get you to a place of safety. Are there any places in Atlanta that's readily available for those types of for women? Other than the shelter, because I'm telling you, I've referred women to shelters, and sometimes they're on the list for, you have to wait a week. So what does that person do in the meantime? What is available right away? And I feel that's the biggest problem. Getting that person to safety in a safe shelter that night, because it could be 1, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning that they need help. Anyone or any place will take you in anyway. I need to name the reason why, because I've had persons, I actually take 2 people in my house, victims of domestic violence, just to get them to see. Does anyone know any places in Georgia area that's available, readily available, who will say, look, no matter what, we gotta get her, take her to the police station, let her make a report, and get her, get her help.
So I have a friend that, I live in Cotton, Rockdale County, so we went through the police for her. She was in a domestic violence situation. The guy had her since, she ran away from a foster home situation like when she was 14, and they go around to the bus stop and pick up girls who are in that situation. So she is serious, but we, by the county we're in, and Rockdale fortunately not only had a place for her, but she had 2 dogs who were like children to her, and she didn't want to leave them, and they took the dogs too, which I've never heard of that. But the lady that they built the home after wouldn't leave her dogs because they were her children, and a man killed her. So then they started so we're still developing places. So then they thought, people don't want to leave their kids. Of course, there's a category if you have kids right away. And then also we went through the police. They're open 24/7. So they know just call and come 3 o'clock in the morning, and they have places to take children and women immediately. It's going to change the county as to what's available to you. But for the most part, there's the police will refer you to someone. I know they have my sister's house with our church, the Harvest Tabernacle, partners with them every month and feed them and go down there and minister. And they take women and children. They have a dorm-like situation, but yes, there may be a waiting list. And then they also feed people off the street. So say the facility holds 300, they still feed 200 people off the street that are not in the facility while they're waiting for a place to get into that program. Of course, it's set up in a dormitory situation for women and children. But you still have to just get with whatever county you're in, wherever it took place, and then go from there. Yeah, that's discouraging because we went to United Way. You just have to go through all the programs and figure out, but sometimes you can't get them, and you don't want to encourage someone to leave, and then you don't have no place for them to go, and then you do end up taking them in your house or whatever, so we need more places definitely like that can take the women and children, and some of them have jobs, so then they worry about how to get to my job, and where my job is. So, and then the places they do go to will help you file police reports, will help you get restraining orders, will help you go to the court and put things in the worker's house, whatever, an attorney, whatever. So yeah, unfortunately, offhand, my sister's house downtown, north side, about, and Rockdale County, like I said, they have facilities around the hospital that will take you. And of course, they give you the name, but they protect the people there, so you can't walk up on it or drive up on it because you could be bringing the abuser there. So they're not supposed to know where they are, so you're not going to see the home. If you're sitting there in the community, you're there for obvious reasons, and you can't just approach it. There's a person that will let you in or not based on your situation. But I'm sure Lakeisha probably knows more about it.
There's International Women's House that's in Decatur, Georgia. You can go there. I've got facilities that make people, like you
And also, some of the mega churches, they used to have houses that they sponsor for women's domestic violence. Um, like she said, United Way, and what's happening now, and you know, a lot of people, because what I do, I also have a women ministry. Women just do it, and what happens is, what happening in Georgia right now is that they're closing them. They closing them because of they closed the Presbyterian Church for the 200 men just now. So they also doing some of the other places because of the abuses that the people do. When you take somebody there, take care of people places. Because what happens is their benefits and their money coming from the county, coming from the state. So right now they're in the process of closing down a lot of those places for women and men. So when we recommend someone to go to those places, let them know that when you go, don't use it like you're abusing it, because a lot of times they abuse it and these people cannot keep their places up. They can't keep their houses up because their houses are so tore up, and will not approve for their money when they can't pass this inspections. Right now, that's the crisis that Atlanta is going through. So I'm in Gwinnett County, and I know for sure that mine's the ones in Gwinnett County because it's about 80% of Hispanics in those neighborhoods. So, but we just have to keep pushing that when we do recommend someone, know for sure that they need the help. Because a lot of them, they do a U-turn and they go back and they abuse the situation, so just, I know we don't know for sure, but sometimes we have to just feel that unction and just sit down and talk with them and just say, if you need the help, we'll come. I have walked some in some places in DeKalb County. So, when I was in DeKalb County, but then I'm in Gwinnett now. And so I hadn't really learned Lawrenceville because I've just been up there 3 months, but just really, truly, the people who need help. People truly need help. So like you're stuck with these people, but it's those who already messed those places up that these places are closing. So we just have to understand that when we recommend someone or take someone there, that they truly meant from the bottom of their heart that they need the help.
You can check out the Family Promise Center of whatever county, because they have various Family Promise Centers that they are homeless facilities, but they have some that are for women and children only, that are shelters that they set up for domestic violence victims or women with children that need a place to go. So they, as she was saying, I'm in Gwinnett also, and that's one of the ones that I frequent. I'm on the board of the Family Promise Center in Gwinnett County, but I know they have different entities, but they're just whatever county you in. So if you Google or went on the website to familypromise.org, it can show you all the locations that they have actual centers for, and then they have centers within that may be geared for just women and children. We have one called Southlight Center. It is also in Lawrenceville, but it's for anybody, but it's based out of Lawrenceville. So someone coming from Atlanta, they probably would be put on the waiting list because the Gwinnett County needs itself.
But that UnitedWay.org, pull that up, because if you call one place and they book, they can always give you someone who they know that might have some openings. You know who and that know who, that type of thing. So that's probably what you're end up coming. So why?
I came here from Minnesota 8 years ago, and I was down in Savannah. I just came up to the Atlanta area in October. But before I had left Minnesota, one of the things that we started doing, because number one, I was out in a rural area, but we went really grassroots and started getting donations as far as setting people up safe shelter in the hotels. Now you got to get hotels on board to do this, and you've got to have your people that will donate for the cost of it. But that worked very well. And there was a few times in Savannah where we had to go that route too, because that shelter was always full too. But if you can get hotels on board and have your base, your donor base, to be able to do that. The only thing is you can run into some problems there, because once you put them in the hotel, granted, the user isn't going to know where they are, but are they going to reach out to them and put people in danger? So there's a lot of things you got to have in place when you do that, but it can be done, and it is an option when you've got all the shelters that are full.
So I want to ask a question. What kind of things are in place, or procedures are in place so that the person that's I'm just using the word claim to be the victim does not reach out to their violator? Is there nothing in place? Like, so if you take them to a shelter or someone's home, like somebody has a home for safekeeping, what kind of things are in place? Take
the
them
phone.
Not only do you just take it, but you move it to another place. Because just like you said, that tractor, everybody's in the house can be in danger.
Right.
Don't make it
And the same with children, you have to take the children's phone also, because if they're able to track that woman, they're able to track that children.
And take a long way to your house. Don't go the short way. Take the long way because you don't know if he's following.
And one of the things that we ended up doing at one point was the hotel room would make sure that phone you couldn't use it. And we made sure that the woman had a phone where she could either dial 911 or she could dial the advocate that was on call. And that was it.
Okay.
So that
There's some
eliminated
abusers
that.
Put a tracking phone in your, like you said, that control.
Yeah,
You gotta know where you are all the time.
All
You
the
can already
time.
put that app on your phone when you weren't looking, so he knows where you are. And that's so you don't run into when he's doing his stuff, you on his side.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying, because people see that as love. As my people don't love her. She shows up. She's there for not love you. And when he put his girl, he's doing her. So I need to know where you. I mean, I had a friend that would give chapter blow by blow. You have to say, I'm on the corner of this. Serious? The true story. He was at the end of the street. I'm driving her to the appointment. I look, he's standing in the street like this with a trench coat on. Is that your? Just follow me and see if I. So when I said, shoot, he could have took me first off. You'd be surprised when he bought 3 checks on the day. He would hand them all to her, but it's still control.
Yeah.
Let's not get caught up in, oh, he paid the bill.
Right.
I don't have it. That's
Right.
control.
That's what I'm saying. It's control.
The kids had more control than her. The kids could do whatever he wanted. They wanted, she couldn't.
Right.
And if she went somewhere, that's another thing of signs. He would set a child. Because what? The child's gonna report back. What did y'all do? Where did y'all go? Who did y'all talk to? Come on now. That's the game that we teach our daughters to recognize the games. At these people over a period of time to show you who they are. And when they do, believe who they say. You have to babysit your child and you go to work and you let him babysit you. You don't even know him. And he went to a club and left the child. That's a flag. That's a ship, a flag. There's nothing you can say to me after and my child. You leave a 5-year-old at the house and go to the club. But she kept dating him. So we have to let people know, come on, that's too soon. You don't know him. You don't meet your children, especially with girls. When you have this thing in our church where they'll say, that's what I'm getting to. We have this thing in our church, we'll say, who was molested, stand up, raise your hand, come to the altar. It's girls and boys. They go to the whole family. Guess what? That devil doesn't have a moment where, oh, your girl, you don't leave your girls with boys. You can't leave them with women. You better leave them with you when you know what's going on. But that's for your protection. But I don't want to get off tangent, but just want y'all to know they have an app on your phone where they'll track you and the kids.
Yeah.
Any more comments? And so our next guest is Shemaisha Dancer. And she's coming to talk about it's a little different because she actually watched her sister as well as her brother go through domestic violence. So we come to hear the family's point of view. So hi Shemaisha, how you doing? Hey y'all. How are you? Good. So tell us about your upbringing.
Okay, so this is my start from the beginning. So I didn't grow up in a 2-parent household or whatever. It was pretty much just my mom and my sisters. So we're gonna bring it back to my mom's story because I did question her about it, but it wasn't until recently. So she was brought up in the age where drugs were just really crazy and really taking over. So because of that, my grandmother and her aunt and her uncle were all on drugs. They were all on drugs, so therefore they didn't really have a place to live, a place to go. So she met my father, who is 4 years older than her. She met him when she was 16. So he was kind of like her protector, provider. He took her and my aunt in and pretty much gave them everything that they wanted, everything that they needed, pretty much took care of them. So she looked at that as, well, now he owes him something. So because of that, it's she got my older sister. She had her when she was 18, but I think the abuse started when she was probably around 17. You know, just getting into the relationship. But she felt, like I said, she felt like she owed him something. So therefore, she let him do certain things. Like she would let him abuse her, and she was kind of also afraid to leave because that was her protector, that was her provider. Where is she gonna go? What is she gonna do after she leaves that? She didn't really have that that firm teaching, and we weren't growing up in church, so she didn't have something to run back on or to turn to either. So it was like, this is all I have. I'm just gonna stay until this. I'm just gonna run out or whatever. So he was really abusive to the point where when she was pregnant with me, he tried to throw her off a bridge. They used to, I'm not going to say she didn't fight back, because I think one time she did hit him with like a 2x4 or something like that. That only made him angrier. So I think it was the time where he actually went to jail that set her free. So we had that much contact growing up with him. When we were growing up, he did come around, but when we met him 2 years later, he committed suicide. So that was that. But during that time, I did witness my mom go through. She followed the same men. She always went for the men that could take care of her. She always went for the, drug dealers, the ones in the street, the ones that she knew had money, and those would always be the ones that were always abusive. And so, just growing up, I remember this one guy she used to mess with. I think she thought by bringing me with her that it would kind of change something, because I don't know how the relationship was when we weren't around, but I'm assuming it was abusive. But she brought me with her. I think she went to just pick up her things from his house. And I remember this because he never let us inside the house. But he brought her stuff to the door, and before she left, he punched her in the eye. And I think it's stitches over her eye. To this day, she still has that scar. The last time that, and this is a different relationship, it's kind of like the same type of men, like I said before, but instead the guy wasn't like a drug dealer. He actually had a job and stuff like that. He actually hung out around us and, around the family. And he, I remember we were living in Harlem at the time, and he came to the door, and he was just like standing outside of my mother's door, like her room door, and I was sitting on the end of the bed, and she was on that side of the bed. So, or maybe it was the other way around. Yeah. So he was telling her to just come out the room. He was saying it in a nice, calm, soft voice, like, Kim, just come out the room. Just come out the room. And she was like, no, I'm not coming out the room. Next thing you know, he attacks her. So at this time, me and my sister are a little older. I was probably like 12, like 12 going on 13. And we kind of fought him off. Like we picked up cans and pots and was hitting him to make sure that he would get off of her. He ran. And he pretty much never came back after that. Now, growing up, because me and my sister witnessed that, we would always say, we're not going to follow in those steps. We will always say, we would sit down to each other, oh, we're not going to do that. We're not going to let men hit us. We're not going to let, that's not going to be our story, And I stuck with that part. My sister didn't. So she, my sister was always like a, how can I say it? You can tell she always was very self-conscious because she was a little overweight, but so she didn't really get like, the attention from boys that she wanted. So around the age of, this was 14, we moved up to Albany, New York from Harlem. And she started messing with this guy who was also in a gang or whatever, but he was, I think, probably a year or two older than her. And that's when we noticed the change begin. Because he was really the first guy to give her the attention that she wanted and that, she felt she needed. So she was more vulnerable with him. And, even just sitting down with her and trying to get her story, she would say that she, only reason, she said it started verbal first. How he would say things to her like, if you don't have sex with me, I'm gonna leave you and I'm gonna go with somebody else that will, stuff like that. So because he would say things like, oh, I'm gonna leave you or I'm gonna find somebody else that's gonna do it, she was, she was more vulnerable to give in to whatever it is that, he wanted. So we noticed a change in her because, like I said, she was always quiet, she was always laid back. She turned to the total opposite. She would never come home. She would be out, partying, stuff like that. And we didn't think nothing of it. My mom just thought it was like a phase that she was going through, but it really wasn't. It got to a point where he beat her so bad where she had to get her jaw wired. So it was, we, would ask her, and we would get really upset when like, why do you keep going back to him? And she's like, well, he was just my first everything, So we couldn't really, like, even, I want to say, even now to this day, she still communicates with him. So it's like, I want to say it's just like a really, really, really strong soul tie between them that she hasn't learned to heal from properly. Like, she hasn't taken the time out to heal from herself, to heal herself, period. And, even with my mom, even with getting her story, she couldn't give me the whole truth because she hasn't owned up to her truth yet. So it's hard for her to even talk about what happened because of, the reason she up to the reality of it. Even though, I didn't go in the path that they went through, I still dealt with men that were verbally abused or like mentally abused. So even though it wasn't never physical, it was still verbally and it was still mentally things that I would have to come out of. It was things that still hurt me. It was still things that made me have low self-esteem. It was still things that I still struggle with growing out of. And I'm in the faith now. I came into my truth now. So I found the healing. They haven't necessarily found it yet, but we still praying for them. Please touch and agree. But I came into my truth and I came into my healing behind it. And so I got my way out, whereas they still kind of struggle with it. They're still trying, finding their way. They're still finding their way out. They're still trying to find their healing, and because of that, they're still kind of stuck. So just dealing, just growing up, just watching and dealing with that, not knowing that it plays a huge effect, and not just you, but everyone that's after you. So it's like not just my older sister, not just me, it's 4 more after us, and they're dealing with it too. Even though my mother is not physically going through the abuse anymore, it's still patterns. And because she hasn't broken through it yet, she still is in it, and it's affecting everyone else, around her pretty much. So that's
So it must have to play a role in your mind, and even with her raising girls.
It played a huge role only because growing up, like, we didn't have that, we didn't have the type of parents that, sit us down and be like, hey, this is what you're supposed to do, this is what you're not supposed to do, this is, no, we learned through life experiences. Most of the things that we did learn, even, concerning, like, our body, we learned through school. Like, we never had that one-on-one teaching, we never had that one-on-one, companionship. We just pretty much learned from watching. So, that played a huge part, mentally, because it's like now you're left. My pastor says, he always says something, he says, like, if you don't deal with what you're going through right then and there, it's going to come a point where you're going to have to deal with it all. And I was left dealing with it all at one time because it wasn't, we didn't take the time out to deal with it head on. So, like, even after we saw her being abused and stuff like that, she never addressed it. It's kind of like, hey, it happens, it is what it is, we're going to move on from it. Like, even after that whole thing, like, you could tell she was, like, embarrassed, but she never sat down and talked to us and said, hey, don't you let no person put their hands on you, don't you let nobody talk to you like this, don't you let nobody do like that. No, that's something that we had to do on our own.
So you say you have went through mental and verbal abuse?
So it was pretty much just coming from, different, relationships, teenagers, you just out there trying to figure out life for you, for yourself. And it's just one of those situations where because us as women, we see the good in people and we want the good to come out of people, but when it doesn't, then we're still left with, everything, deal with everything. We can't be Superman, and we're not Wonder Woman. So we can't save you. And our mentality sometimes is, you know what, I'm going to save you. I'm going to save you. So even though I was in relationships and I felt like I knew better, I would still stay. Why? I don't know. But because I saw something that they could potentially be. And I would neglect how I felt. Because I'm like, oh, I'm good. Later on, not knowing that later on down the line, those really, played a really huge, it was like vital moments of my life. And it played a huge role in how I would operate, how I would think, and how I would do things. Because, even unconsciously to me, which is funny, but I realized that I did things like this subconsciously. I wouldn't date guys that were bigger than me. Like football player type? No, because I'm like, okay, if he tries to hit me, I'm not going to win this one. So I will always go for the